You want to write a story, but before you can, you need to create the world. You start writing your notes and end up overwhelmed. No matter what you do, there's always something else that requires your attention, and you never actually even get to start your story. In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about world building and help you figure out when it's actually time to start your story. They say to think about world building as being like an iceberg. You got 10% of it above the water. That's the 10% that your audience directly sees and interacts with. And then you got the 90% that is hidden under the surface. Now, the 90% is just as important because without that mass, there'd be nothing lifting up the 10% and actually making it buoyant. And if your audience looks close and they sort of try to look under the surface of the water, if there's nothing there, it's going to feel very fake. So then that begs the question, what do? Do you have to waste all these countless hours working on stuff that people aren't even going to see? And the answer to that is no, not really. A lot of people, they run into a problem where they do world building over here, world building over there, and then they come back over here, do something else, then they're up there, and then they're down there. And they're just doing a little bit of world building all over the place. And now you end up with a problem where your world building has been done in a way that makes your lore and your background stuff look like a vast ocean. But then the second you step into it, you realize it's as shallow as a puddle. Like you're getting ankle deep at best. You don't really want that. You want something more concise with a lot more depth. You want to be very focused in your world building, and you want it to be purpose driven. Something else that becomes a real problem with that is now you have all these ideas and all this different stuff that's unrelated that is set in stone, or at least you feel that it is, and it's sort of looming over your head and it starts to limit your creativity. So how do you avoid that? Really direct your focus. Make sure that effort is going into the right place. You want to be world building for a single story, not world building for 10 at the same time. You want to really be direct, and anything that this story requires, you're going to want to tackle that. In specific, you're going to want to really build up that top 10% of your iceberg. You want that thing to be very solid. You want that to be sort of your basis and sort of your foundation of your story. But now you're asking, what about that bottom 90%? I made it sound so important before, and it is. The thing with the bottom 90% though is, if you think mass-wise, the top 10% of your iceberg is going to weigh almost nothing, using that analogy, compared to the bottom 90%, right? The bottom 90% is exponentially more. And if you try to flesh that out to the same extent, you're going to just waste so much time. What you want to do is you want to flesh out the outer shell of that bottom 90%, to keep using this analogy. You want it to be like if you look below the surface of the water, you see the rest of the iceberg, you know it's there, and you have a basis and you're grounded. And you don't want it to be completely set in stone all the way through, right? You do, in some spots, want to have like a support network on the inside of the iceberg, right? Like some sort of trusses or framing that supports that hollow bottom portion, but you really don't need anything overly specific in there. You just need enough to prop up the actual story and make it feel more real. Get everything working the way you want it to. Having some space for interpretation and for growth is going to be what really makes things better for you here, because you're going to love your world building. You're going to think it's perfect. Then you're going to get into the story. The story is going to evolve over time, and the story itself is going to make you discover things as you write it that you never thought of, or it's going to make you change your opinion or change the way you see the world. If everything is absolutely completely fleshed out, if you got 100% of your world, that can cause issues, right? But if you have some flexibility in there, that is much more conducive to altering your sort of story and your background and your world building. You really got to ask yourself some important questions, like, if you're making a cowboy story, do you really need to know what happened 300 years before it? And if you're making a medieval story, do you really need to know what happened in your world's equivalent of ancient Greece? If the answer is yes, then world build it, right? It becomes part of your outer shell or part of your support beams. But if the answer is no, you're really spinning the wheels there, right? Like, you can have a vague idea of that kind of stuff, even if it's not important, but don't flesh it out. Put it on the back burner, keep it for later. Maybe it does become a later story, script or book, whatever. But don't shackle yourself and don't set it in stone until you're actually ready for that kind of commitment. You're wasting time focusing on another story when you should be focusing on this one, if it's not necessary for this specific story. And that advice rings true for every facet of world building, whether it's history, culture, religion, politics, or geography. It's still covered by this actual advice. Now, if you want me to really get into detail with each of those specifics, I can make separate videos on each of them. Just make sure to let me know down in the comment section below if you're interested in that. Above all else, make sure you don't wait to get started with writing. If you only have 20 to 30% of your world building done, you can still start, right? Your world building is going to change with your story, and you're going to do multiple drafts of your story. Even if you're really, really loving the first one, you're going to get some refinement in there. So the world building itself can be done alongside the initial draft, but it can also mature and change alongside the actual book or script itself as you go through multiple drafts. If you have a more concrete plan, that's perfectly fine, but it's not a requirement, right? Just go out there, write, learn something from it. And if your ideas need refinement, there's always room for refinement later. It's not the kind of thing where you have to get it right 10 years before you start. You can work on it alongside, like I've said a bunch of times. And that's all I have for today's lesson. So as always, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to answer them for you.